we want to start this press conference in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So the Citizen Coalition, our full name is the Coalition for Democratic Accountability and Inclusive Governance. And we prefer to be called Citizens Coalition because we are doing this for the citizens. This afternoon, we are here to give you some updates on things that we have done quite recently since we launched the Citizen Coalition, and also share our perspective on some of the development issues that we believe CSO voices and citizens' voices should be heard on. So to kickstart, we'll have Dr. Kojo Asante present our statement, after which we'll take questions and then we'll call it a day. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm handing over to Dr. Kojo Asante.
Grave and deep concerns about the deteriorating economic conditions in our country, and also government's tepid response so far. It's also our intention here to make some very specific demands that we believe can help build confidence in the state and offer some relief to citizens who are all suffering from the current economic situation. As you may recall, the Citizens Coalition was launched on the 4th of July 2022, and our mission was to establish a culture of accountability and transparent governance that actively and consciously responds to citizens' demand and promotes human rights, constitutionalism, and the national interest. Now, since then, the coalition has worked to re-establish this culture of accountability through sustained advocacy, including a street protest to compel the Auditor General to comply with the Ghana's asset disclosure laws and to exercise his surcharge powers and disallowance powers. And also we've had engagements on the mismanagement of public lands, among others. Now the coalition continues to engage with the Auditor General on these matters. And we have, for example, another meeting scheduled for next week to discuss the way forward. The coalition also remains engaged in issues relating to the mismanagement and the abuse of public lands, including issues arising from the Achimota Forest redesignation. We have written to the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources on these matters, but we have received no response to date. We stated from the beginning, ladies and gentlemen, that Ghana must change, starting with those who are entrusted with public power and resources to serve in the interests of the people. Otherwise, we all risk the survival of our democracy. We want to assure the public that we will persist with our insistence on accountable and transparent government. Since the launch of the coalition in July, the economic situation we know has worsened significantly. As you know, between July and now, the prices of staples like Kenke has risen from 2 cedis, now it's 3 cedis. In some places you may even get it at 5 cedis, depending on where you are. A 5 kg of bag of rice has gone up from 50 cedis to 110 cedis in some cases. A 25 liter of oil has gone up from 600 to 1,400. The general cost of water to drink, sachet water, that's for everybody, 20 pesos sachet water now, some are selling it for 40 pesos, even 50 pesos. But this also means that if you have to buy water to bath in the morning, your price also gone up. Similarly, there's the cost of essential medicines, particularly those who are on chronic life-saving medicines, including our seniors, are facing literally life and death situations if solutions are not found. Transportation costs has gone up, and I don't have to give you examples, but people are paying up to 6 cedis, 7 cedis if you're going from Medina to Circle, and so on and so forth. And of course, we also know that petrol prices has risen astronomically, Now, I think petrol is assisting also. And diesel, of course, is much higher. Now, lastly, the fast depreciation of the cedi also means that many people have already lost significant value on their savings and investments. And for those who have to service loans pegged to the dollar, particularly those who are trying to own a home, as well as businesses who have to import essential goods, are facing unprecedented challenges. My fellow citizens, we have to remember that in all these, there is an army of unemployed youth who before this crisis were already feeling a sense of hopelessness and are now just feeling overwhelmed and numbed by the void and uncertainty of the future facing them. For many in this bracket and in the low income bracket, it simply means going hungry many times in a day than they need to. In fact, addressing youth unemployment and the basic needs for young people survival demands a deliberate and concerted effort that more than what has been seen so far. Unfortunately, government's response has been woefully ineffective. The coalition cautioned in its maiden presser that the approach of insisting that the precipitous decline of the economy could be fully explained by only the COVID-19 pandemic and the Russia-Ukraine war was extremely unhelpful. And in many ways, this has influenced government's response to the crisis so far. The response was then to hang our entire short to medium term solution to the ongoing negotiations with the IMF. As the country and government waited with bated breath, as the cedi plunged, and I think we all saw it, it was like a movie, into free fall, and basic food prices rose uncontrollably at the markets, the country and government, we all waited with bated breath for drips of news to emerge from Washington, D.C. as to what was going on. But moreover, it is the lack of emotional intelligence in the utterances of government representatives that added to the pain, the frustration, and the anger of citizens who felt that either government did not care or did not have a clue about resolving the crisis. The latter, that government did not have a clue, fed a scary thought that the ship was sinking. I think the time for action is now. On energy and natural resource governance issues, just a few demands. A significant component of our national debt and current predicament arises from the governance of the energy and the natural resource subsector. And we have been raising concerns about the many anti-developmental policy decisions in the energy sector. The one being the decision to give a mind-boggling sweetheart deal to a single company, Gensa, with the risk of the country losing 1.5 billion, while we desperately search for double this amount from the IMF. The energy sector remains key to the revival of this economy, but the self-inflicted hemorrhaging and misgovernance of the sector must stop if we are serious about getting out of this mess. Two things. The coalition reiterates its call for government to cancel or renegotiate the Gensa agreement. In addition, the policy on who regulates the pipelines for transporting gas and who owns the infrastructure must be clarified and firmed up. The Citizen Coalition also remains opposed to the JAPA agreement. In our estimation, it is dead and buried, and we don't want it resurrected. On the economy, we know that our fellow citizens are facing unprecedented challenges with rising inflation and cedi depreciation. Citizens and government must think outside the box to deal with the immediate symptoms of the problem. We know that there are structural issues. We import too much, we have not invested in critical national infrastructure and all of that. But we still have to deal with the symptoms because people are suffering. And this particularly food inflation and the rising cost of fuel, transportation, and healthcare. The Citizens Coalition calls on government to immediately work through the Agric Ministry to identify staples whose prices are solely driven by transportation costs and inefficient systems of delivery to urban markets from farms to markets. And that's the a big part of. There are things that we can eat that if you go outside of Accra, it's much cheaper, and yet you are buying it 3-4 times, in Accra. So if it can be brought from wherever it is, we should be able to facilitate that. That, I think, should ease some of the suffering around food inflation. Second, review the current policy to force the sale of FX foreign currency from mining companies, depriving commercial banks of forex for trading. Now, certainly there is a need to have tighter controls on the use of forex at commercial banks, so that it is not used to hoard dollars. I mean, that's happening currently. Everybody is channeling the dollars to Bank of Ghana so that they can look at critical sectors, but it leaves no dollars for anything. So we have to really review that policy, because it's creating even more demand and making the depreciation even worse. 3, we strongly recommend that the government encourage public and private sector employers to return to the flexi working or work from home schemes deployed during the COVID-19 lockdown and after. This will help mitigate the pressure on particularly young people and those in the lower income brackets to manage the cost of transport. There are people are spending huge sums of money coming from Kaswa to their work, and we did some of those things during the pandemic. We have to see those who can work from home, at least in the short term, to deal with some of the challenges, because people are spending all their monies on transportation. So we need to find practical ways of limiting our expenditure on it. We're also asking government to consider adding the supply of life-saving chronic medicines to the list of critical items that need forex from the Bank of Ghana. If you're on BP medicine like I am, if you are not able to get your BP medicine, for many people it's a life and death situation. And for our seniors, those who are much older and have to rely on these things, diabetes, all those kinds of things. So we have to find a solution to those areas, and we have to consider them as a critical sector. We strongly support ongoing talks between the government and the banks to look at domestic debt restructuring. And we also strongly call on the president as a matter of urgency to address the nation. We understand the president might be addressing the nation on Sunday. And we believe that, as he had done during the pandemic, we want to get more information. As I said, we are not waiting. IMF and Professor Tichua will talk about that, so let me not segue into that discussion. But it's important to underscore that our program with the IMF is not the one that is going to save us from our current challenges. And whatever we need to do, we shouldn't be waiting till after an IMF program before we start doing it. It has to start now. As we chart a way out of our economic woes through the IMF program, the government must ensure that whatever agreement will be tabled must be citizen-centered, one that reflects our aspirations. Ladies and gentlemen, there are important matters of policy and programs for the medium to long term that must be addressed courageously. We need people of courage. We need citizens of courage to be frank, to recognize that this is the time for us to take those decisions that we have been putting aside for many years and learn our lesson. At this moment, the right signals have to be sent to appease citizens and to assuage their fears. The president must listen to Ghanaians and lead the nation. His ministers and deputies must work to find short-term solutions to stem the tide of uncertainty and fear. That is why we are paying them. A national stakeholder forum can help to develop consensus on priorities for the medium to long term, and we remain committed to our duties as citizens to ensure public power and resources are used primarily for the benefits of citizens. We are also totally committed to the survival of our democracy, despite its challenges. As citizens, we must take on the responsibility to hold our governments to account in between elections, so we can correct the misbehavior early on before it undermines our commonwealth. we tend to just watch things just go bad until there's a crisis. And then we are all trying to push. We have to change that behavior. We have to change that behavior. And therefore, coups, the talk of coups and other forms of unconstitutional changes in government are never the answer to our economic and governance woes, which is why citizens and civil society exist to hold those duty bearers accountable. The citizens that jubilated over coups in Mali, Guinea, and Burkina are now experiencing the full brutality of military rule. And it should be a lesson for all of us. We want to assure all Ghanaians that we will create and communicate platforms for citizens to share their views, grievances, and their reliefs that they need in the coming days. So there are a lot of people who are despondent, who are not sure, and I think we have to give them an opportunity to also share what kinds of reliefs, what can we do. There are no easy answers, but it doesn't mean that people can't think and find practical solutions. So we have to create those platforms, particularly for the young people, who really can't see ahead what their future is going to be. And in the spirit of democracy, and that's exactly what democracy is about, so that we can ensure that our democracy is for and by the people, that we listen to the people and we take action accordingly. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to us. God bless Ghana and God bless us all.